When most people see the number $34 trillion, the first reaction is fear. It feels like something has reached its limit. But if you zoom out and look at history, the United States has stood at similar cliffs more than once. Each time looked dangerous, yet things didn't unfold in the worst possible way. The key is that a nation handles debt on a completely different level than individual. Back in 1946, right after World War II, U.S. debt relative to GDP was actually higher than it is today. There was no collapse narrative then. What followed was decades of growth. The core method was simple but often overlooked. Dilute the debt through economic growth, while allowing moderate inflation to quietly reduce its real burden. It sounds mild, but in reality it's a slow redistribution from holders of cash and fixed income assets. Then came the 1970s and 1980s, when the U.S. faced both debt pressure and runaway inflation. This time, the strategy flipped completely. High interest rates were used to crush inflation, even at the cost of a recession. The short-term pain was severe, but it rebuilt long-term credibility for the dollar. In the 1990s, a third path emerged: productivity growth driven by technological innovation. The internet boom accelerated the economy, increased fiscal revenues, and even briefly produced a budget surplus. It looked like a miracle, but the underlying logic was still the same: outgrow the debt. If you look at these three periods together, a pattern becomes clear. The U.S. rarely repays debt in the traditional sense. Instead, it reshapes the environment, sometimes through inflation, sometimes through interest rates, sometimes through growth. At its core, it chooses the most advantageous mix at each stage. This flexibility is tied to the dollar's role in the global system. That's why predictions of collapse keep appearing but rarely materialize. Debt itself isn't the real issue. What matters is who holds it, what currency it's denominated in, and whether the system remains accepted globally. Today's $34 trillion is significant, but the real pressure lies in whether growth can continue. If a new growth engine fails to emerge, the debt problem will become more visible. This helps explain why Wall Street is so intensely focused on new technologies. It's not purely optimism, it may be necessity. History suggests that for the U.S., the most effective way to deal with debt has never been austerity, but finding the next story that can sustain growth.